comments, and we will make sure that we try to get to all of those questions tonight. All right. Okay, I'm waiting for her to come back. Tara, if you came back, Tara, just give me a comment, and I'll bring you back in. I see Gompers. Gompers is in the building again tonight. I see y'all, Gompers. How y'all doing? Let me text her, make sure she's good. I see Gompers is in the building. Hey, repairs. Hello, how are you? Oh, there she is. There we go. All right. Let's try this again. Ladies and gentlemen, CNN commentator, my friend.
Back.
Tara Setmayer. Ah, there she is.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
How you doing, sis?
I'm good. You know, hanging in there, dealing with this quarantine stuff, but it's all good.
So I was telling folks I'm a little late tonight because I literally just got off the floor of the House of Representatives. We had our state budget up tonight and a lot of other crazy bills going on the floor. So we're running bills, and I'm like, we got to come on because I got this amazing conversation that we're gonna have tonight. So we got to hurry this up. But no, sure. but and folks, I'll talk to you about the budget another time because it's gonna be crazy. But anyway, Tara Setmayer is a CNN political commentator, and she's a good friend of mine. So you know, for those that don't know you, for those who may be under a rock and don't see you on Anderson Cooper or on Don Lemon's show, tell us, who is Tara Setmayer?
Well, let's see. You said I'm a CNN commentator, but before that, in my prior life, before I was a media commentator, I worked on Capitol Hill as a Republican communications director for many years. I've been involved in conservative politics for 20 plus years, and I am a sane conservative and a prolific Trumper, but we have now rebranded ourselves. We are principled conservatives. And for the last few years, I have dedicated my life and platform to making sure Donald Trump gets out of office.
So folks, I want y'all to hear, and this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because Tara is a Black conservative who does not support Donald Trump and does not support a lot of these crazy policies. And here's the thing. So everybody know I'm a Democrat. I'm a strong Democrat. I support, taking back our house here in Pennsylvania. But I've worked across the aisle, many times to get things done. But I wanted to have this conversation. And we'll get to what, Vice President Joe Biden said and whatnot, because I thought this kind of conversation is extremely interesting. Because I want to know, how did you get to your conservative views on different things?
Well, my mom was a single parent. She had me at 21, and I'm biracial. My mom is German-Italian, and I grew up in blue-collar North Jersey, right outside New York City. So I grew up in a very blue-collar environment, and my mom, we didn't always consider ourselves conservative, actually. She didn't, my mom grew up in the 60s and 70s, so she was very progressive, but then as she got older, she realized that she didn't really agree with some of the policies of the progressive Democrat movement with things, and she actually started listening to talk radio, of all things, back in the I know, right? It's when I was at Harvard, I wanted to have Brian Rosenwald, who wrote a really good book called Talk Radio America, and it talks about how the phenomenon of Donald Trump and talk radio and how that merged over the last 30 years. But anyway, but talk radio was very influential for me in my, as I kind of started developing my viewpoints on things, and for my mom as well. And, she just kind of felt that there were certain things about the Democratic Party that made it seem, focus more on victimization. And some of the things that, these opinions have evolved over time, but that was kind of how it was then. And she felt that they didn't really align with what she believed. And those things made sense to me. And as I got older, the conservative viewpoint of smaller government, individualism, you know, strong military, kind of all the quintessential Republican things, lower taxes and stuff like that made sense to me. And as I decided I wanted to go to college, I went to George Washington University in DC, and the rest is.
So you're a Black conservative.
Yeah, I'm a conservative first, but the woman of color, yes.
No, and I say that, you know, because our politics have become so polarizing,
Yeah.
in recent times, that, you know, different folks look at the conservative view through the Trump lens.
Ugh.
And I think what we're seeing with folks like you and Ana Navarro is that, you know, the Trump lens is not the lens that you see yourself through. But before we get through all of that, then you've been all over the place. You've been on The View. Somebody just said that they miss you on The View. Are we going to see you on The View again anytime soon?
Well, apparently not up to Meghan McCain.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I appreciate all the opportunities that I've gotten to guest host The View over the years, and Whoopi and the rest of the team has been wonderful. I really don't know what Meghan McCain's problem is with me. But you know, that's not up to me. They call, I'm happy to come back and guest host anytime.
Okay. So we that's a possible on seeing you on The View again.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into all of this? I mean, you worked on Capitol Hill, but how did you transition from being on Capitol Hill to doing all of the great stuff that you're doing in media?
Well, it was I was reluctant to do it, actually. I had no plans on being a full-time media person. I've always been an in the trenches, you know, political person, messaging and, you know, getting things done. I like to get my hands dirty when it comes to like getting things done. And while I worked in Capitol Hill, I got involved in a case that I was advocating for 2 Border Patrol agents who had been unjustly imprisoned, and it was a whole long thing. And for 2.5 years, I was kind of the Erin Brockovich of that case. And that gave me a lot of media exposure nationally. Now, it's unconventional because most communications directors on Capitol Hill, they don't go in front of the camera. It's their job to get their boss in front of the camera. But the congressman I worked for felt as though that I was an asset because of my ability to communicate the conservative message. So he would allow me to go on air almost more often than he did sometimes. And so I caught the eye of some cable news folks, including Glenn Beck at the time. And that's a whole nother discussion, but Glenn at the time was starting The Blaze and looking for talent. And so for over a year, his people courted me and said, you know, you would really be a great voice for the conservative movement. We'd give you your own platform. They courted me for a year, and I kept telling them no. And then finally in the summer of 2013, they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I said, what the hell? And so my husband said, all right, let's do it. Gave me an opportunity to move back to New Jersey. Studios were in New York. And I started a 3-year contract there that ended up going away in a year because Glenn Beck tanked the network and it was a disaster. And I actually I was not happy with the decision I made very early on because I was bored. I was used to being in the thick of it every day on Capitol Hill and doing things and seeing what I was doing, seeing the product that I was doing, helping people. Mm-hmm. And I was very bored with doing full-time media there. What they promised me didn't come to fruition. So I didn't have my own platform and all that. So within a year, things went awry, the network overall. But luckily, Jeff Zucker saw me on CNN and said, go get her. And this was in 2014. It was a full 2014, so it predates Donald Trump. They just needed a strong Republican voice that didn't look like all the other Republicans, which was me, because I came from a very fresh, authentic perspective on Republican policies. And so they thought good TV, and the rest is history. So I'm very grateful to CNN for giving me that opportunity. And who knew a year later that we'd be in the middle of this insanity with Donald Trump rising through the ranks as a Republican nominee, and I would become one of the more prolific voices on cable news against him.
Shout out to Delegate Jazz Lewis that just tuned in from the great state of Maryland. Shout out to our brother Jazz. So let me ask you this: how is it to be a woman of color and a conservative? Like what is it? Because I'm sure when people find out, there's always an eyebrow raise or whatnot. So like, what is that like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been a nonconformist my whole life. So it was, it's always kind of been brushed off my shoulder. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But in the beginning, it was a challenge because I didn't understand why I had so much adversity, like why people were so turned off by the fact that I had a different point of view when it came to political things. And so it was a learning process early on. Like when I was in college, I was thinking about pledging Delta, and one of the Deltas, our Delta chapter at GW had been suspended, and so they were reinstating it. And some of the sorors that were doing it, they were so upset with the fact that I was the vice chair of the college Republicans that they, were like, nah, we can't have her. And I thought, wait, this is supposed to be a sisterhood, and because I have a different political view, I'm not good enough to pledge. So that turned me off from that. But, that was an early on where it kind of like it hit me. I was like, wait, it's that serious? So I kind of learned, and I found out why. That comes with learning and knowing the history behind all of these things and why there is so much distrust of that. And I made it a point to say, you know what? I want to meet people where they are, because I think that there's a lot of us have the same end goal, what we want to see done. We just differ in how we get there. So let's have a conversation about how we can get there, where we have some common ground, and then how we can possibly do things that help people. And so I had just a completely different approach to talking about it. I never came across as combative initially. That was not how I wanted to do things. I always wanted to have a conversation, and I never started those conversations with the goal of I'm right and you're wrong, and it's like that's pointless. That's just very narcissistic. And there's a lot of people who do that because they get off on it. That's not me. If I have someone that says, I never thought about it that way, or, well, I learned something today, then I feel like mission accomplished in that conversation. And that's how I've always approached it. I come from a fact-based perspective. I listen, and I don't have a problem with acknowledging if somebody else makes a better point or something I didn't know, saying, oh, okay. And the dialogue goes from there. So it was hard in the beginning because I couldn't understand it, but I'm a tough Jersey girl. So, it was like, whatever after that.
So here's a question. So, how would you define your particular brand of conservatism?
I would say I'm a pragmatic, compassionate conservative. I looked at the Jack Kemps of the world and kind of melded that with the more intellectual conservatives, the Bill Buckleys and those kinds of things. But Jack Kemp brought that conservatism into a very practical way. He presented it in a way where he said, you have to go into people's communities, you have to talk to them, you have to show them, instead of all this high conversations about what conservatism is versus liberalism and classic liberalism and all that. People don't care about that. That's not going to help them build businesses and buy houses, put their kids through college. He was like, you have to meet them where they are. And so when he was secretary of HUD under Bush 41, he did a lot of things where he was in the communities, but in minority communities, explaining to folks the ideas of opportunity zones and providing a ladder, because you can't guarantee outcomes, but let's give people equal opportunity to things. And so that's the way I approach my conservatism. It's a worldview, and it's very much the way Jack Kemp and even George W. 43, the way when he said he was a compassionate conservative, I feel that. Because that's how it comes from the heart for me.
Okay, so, and I hate to do this, but there are many conservative figures out there who are people of color.
Right.
Would you compare? Well, I wouldn't even want to say compare yourself. How do you look at yourself versus let's say a Candace Owens or someone like that?
Well, first of all, Candace Owens is not a real conservative, okay? She's a grifter, and she's willfully ignorant, and she is what I call shuck and jive conservative. She's one of those people who's out there tap dancing for money, and, she's gotten plenty of notoriety for it, but yet she continues to say things and advocate for things that are just so ignorant that I don't even know where to start. And then sullies the idea of what conservatism is. She's not a conservative. She all of a sudden caught wind to the grift game like everybody else that, Turning Point USA people and all of these folks that came out of the woodwork when Donald Trump showed up and saw how they could get notoriety and make money. Because she was running a liberal website 6 months before Donald Trump got elected. So which is it, honey?
Wow.
You know? So yeah. So these people who just all of a sudden had this epiphany that, oh, they're conservatives, the Blexit thing. I mean, listen, I had my issues with the Democratic Party taking the black vote for granted, and that was a conversation we had for years, and it's coming up again. But this whole idea that under Donald Trump that somehow all these black folks are liberated to become Republicans is asinine. That's cognitive dissonance to the nth degree.
Tell us how you really feel. Tell us how you really feel.
Because, I can't with these people, like, don't even, my name and Candace Owen in the same sentences should never happen.
Oh, my bad. I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble. So, it's funny you say that, because I oftentimes, and again, I tell folks all the time, I'm a proud Democrat. I'm a Democratic member of a legislative body, a Democratic leader, and I'm going to do what I can to ensure that Democrats are elected. But as a black person, right? For me, I've always felt that black folks aren't necessarily Democrat or Republican. We're black first, because as a oppressed and a group of folks who are often marginalized in our body politics, I think what we do is not necessarily conservative or liberal. It's not necessarily Democrat or Republican. It's about how do we get what's best for our community. And oftentimes, I think people look down on us as if we're wrong for having an agenda or for wanting to get stuff that benefit us. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, like when people ask me, are you a Republican or what? And I say, well, I'm a conservative first, because the Republican or Democrat moniker is just simply the collective way in which you exercise your political power, right? That doesn't define who you are. So it's, I think that the party system is very broken now, and it's been getting worse over the decades, where there are, as a collective group, there aren't all, there isn't a monolith with all black folks, right? Black folks have different views on different things and different experiences, but there are certain things that are common. And so it's, and you can't deny those. So when you start to deny that, that's when it becomes very disingenuous. And I think that, that's somewhat what we see now.
All right. So the big question that I think we have to talk about. So Vice President Joe Biden, who I've endorsed, politically I've endorsed and am supporting for president, went and did an interview with Charlemagne the God. And at the end of the interview, made a comment that basically, if you're voting for Donald Trump, you're not black. Now here's the thing. A lot of people have had a lot of things to say, and I'll hold my opinion. I'll let you give yours first, and then I'll share mine. But a lot of people, it's been all over Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. A lot of people are talking about it. First of all, were you offended by that comment?
No, I wasn't offended, because it takes a lot to offend me. And I've been called every name in the book by black folks back before Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? Black folks were the harshest when it came to me. I was called an Uncle Tom and an Aunt Mammy, and I got accused of bleaching my skin, and I'm a sellout to I mean, I heard it all over the years from our folks. Right. So hey, I was like, well, I've been said that I'm not this or that all the time because I have a different point of view. So but what I did do was wince, because I know that he was trying to be cool, and, thought that he was down, and he probably heard his black, staffers making that comment amongst ourselves kind of situation, and thought, yeah, this is my opportunity to say something cool.
Right.
And it just came out all kinds of wrong. And so, Joe Biden, bless his heart, he tries too hard, but he comes from a good place. I don't think that Joe Biden is, taking black votes for granted. I mean, it was the black vote that saved his entire candidacy in South Carolina. And he's been consistently, throughout his career, he's been a friend to the black community on issues that are of utmost importance. And so, it was a mistake. It was a dumb thing to say. And I told the Washington Post that it unfortunately reinforced the stereotype that Democrats take black votes for granted. and that he should apologize. Not disqualifying, not his heart or his record. And, he ended up apologizing, and I thought the apology was more than sufficient.
So, okay. So when I heard it, I was just like, oh,
yeah.
Damn. Like, oh, why you say that? But you know what? In the same breath that I said, why did you say it? I also thought to myself, everybody else that I know that is black is saying the exact same thing.
Right.
Like, they like, yo, there's no, and I looked at it from this lens, like, how can you be a person of color, right? How can you be a black person and look at the policies of the president and still want to vote for him? That's how I took his comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I said about cognitive dissonance. I mean, there were times, like, if this had been a normal Republican, let's say it had been, I don't know, Mitt Romney or someone, or Paul Ryan, or, like a normal, sane Republican that was the current president, and that comment was made, then I would be a little bit more upset about it, because at least there would be a more viable option for the other side. Like, it would be like, well, we can have a conversation about, maybe economic policies or different, healthcare policies that some people in the black community may feel are better suited to their beliefs. Then you have a policy conversation. Then I would have been like, okay, come on, that's not fair. You can't say that, you ain't black because you want to vote for a Republican. But we're talking about Donald Trump here. Donald Trump, who's been a racist his entire life, who's been sued more than once for racial discrimination in housing, in employment, has said awful things about people of color. We already know how he feels. I mean, he's the Archie Bunker in chief every day with the stuff that he says. And it's like, and now I don't care if Donald Trump promised every person of color in the world reparations, a new house, and a full scholarship to college. That is not, you want to sell out for a guy that thinks that you're nothing, that thinks that that's a white, like, it comes from a white supremacist point of view. No, I'm sorry. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand where Joe Biden was coming from with that.
The not even funny, the thing that I said to one of my friends, I'm like, look, I'm just tired of people questioning my humanity and me supposedly being okay with that. Like, right. There is a difference. Like, right. And I agree with you. There are Republicans who have, or I should say, who are Republicans who have conservative views that I disagree with. We have policy disagreements. Correct. But they don't question my humanity.
Right.
They don't question, should I have equal protection or rights and all of that other kind of stuff. Right. They don't do that. So I can have a policy disagreement and it not go that far because you're not questioning my humanity.
Exactly.
But what we see here is something, in my view, that's just totally different. This is a man who questions my humanity, number one. Number two, for me, it's just that the dude is just... The man suggested that you drink bleach,
right,
to cleanse yourself of the coronavirus.
Asinine things this guy has said, I know.
Right, and I've been having these conversations and these debates with folks. I'm like, listen, this kind of presidency can be dangerous. And here's the thing: I have admittedly said that I agreed with one or two things he's done. Some of the stuff that he's done on criminal justice reform, yes, right, 100% agree with some of the things that he's done. But he is a dangerous president. You know what I mean?
Donald Trump to get those things. That's the argument I say all the time to people when they're like, well, look at the Supreme Court, Republicans. Look at the Supreme Court. Look at the judges. Look at the tax cut. Mm-hmm. Look at criminal justice. Like, Trump has done so many amazing things. I'm like, wait a minute. At what cost? We didn't need Donald Trump to do any of this. This was standard Republican stuff. If we had a sane, competent Republican president, how much more would we have been able to accomplish without the absolute chaos and destruction of our everyday institutions and democratic norms would we have had if we don't need Donald Trump to do this. He's destroyed so many things and created a legacy of hypocrisy for so many Republicans that used to stand on principle, that all that went right the hell out the window for power. How are they ever going to stand on these principles again? So we didn't need Donald Trump for that. We could have any sane Republican do what Donald Trump has done that Republicans like. and more without destroying their character, integrity, and democratic norms and institutions to do it. I just don't get it. It's not worth it. None of it. Not one judge, not one bill. None of this is worth what we're going through right now.
Wow. Okay, so we agree on a lot of that. So let me ask you this question. In your view as a conservative, what would you see as a Black agenda?
So I would say that there's three main issues that would need to be addressed. Maybe four. Healthcare, education, access to capital, so the opportunity zones, small business ownership, those kinds of things that help create wealth, and criminal justice reform. All issues that revolve around those policies that revolve around those issues, I think, are most important for people of color in this country.
But what does that look like to you? So like, for example, you say healthcare. Yeah. What does that look like? Education. What does that look like from your lens?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are they're complex issues. You know what I mean? We're not
absolutely. No, I get that.
But I've been a big proponent, let's say, with education. When George W. Bush said the soft bigotry of low expectations was a civil rights issue, I thought that was a really profound thing to say, and it stuck with me for many years, because I look at how in communities of color that have terrible public school systems, how that disadvantages kids right off the top. Frederick Douglass said education is the key to freedom. And if you don't have a decent school system where kids are learning, having access to computers and textbooks and things that they need in an environment to learn, the odds are already stacked against you. So I've been a big, vouchers, school, charter schools, things like that. I mean, over the years, different things have worked in different ways, but I just think that we've got to do some things that are better to help with kids, starting there, because without that, you lose a lot of options in life. That's just one example. Another example would be with opportunity zones, for example. Like I brought that up. That's something that's very important, because then you're building wealth. And I think that that's something that this administration has actually done a decent job on, because my friend Jerron Smith is over there in the White House, and he's made this kind of a passion project for him. And as much shit as I've given Jerron staying in the White House way too long, at least he's doing something positive that's helping the community.
Shout out to Jerron Smith. He making it happen. He do some criminal justice stuff too.
He has. And, I know it can't be easy. I couldn't do it, but at least he's doing something. He's doing something positive, trying to keep his head down, and getting some things done that are productive. But that's important too. It's you have to, if people don't have, if there's no opportunity to build wealth or have something of your own and ownership, that also leads to other problems, like, then we get into the criminal justice system and prisons and things like that, and what happens with criminal justice. But these are just very basic, simple things that I think that that had bipartisan support, that we could have worked on to try to start to build, bridge those gaps. But that's all shot to hell now. I mean, there's just no chance for that as long as Donald Trump is in office.
It's crazy. I get criticized as a Democrat for some of the views that I have on education. And I come from the space where, unlike some of my friends who talk about education and public education, like I was actually educated in public school.
Yeah, me too.
I tell people all the time, I come from an era where we had school choice before there was school choice. And that school choice was, if you had a grandma, a cousin, an auntie, or somebody that lived in a better neighborhood, you used their address and you went to the school in that neighborhood because that was a better school. And what we've allowed to happen, in my view, is we have allowed those who are politically connected to get their kids into magnet schools and that school, and and then use that as the backdrop of, I support public education. Yeah. Where, and that's just not the truth. Going to your neighborhood school and going to a magnet school, those aren't those types that educate. They're both public education, but they're not the same. So for me, like, you don't get credit for sending your kid, to this magnet school. That's great. And you don't get credit to then run around and be like, I support public education. Like that's not the same thing, right? And I look at my friends all the time. I'm like, believing and continuing to do the same thing in the same system that has continued to fail Black and brown children, that's not progressive.
Right.
That's not moving forward. Now, I'm also not about scrapping the whole system and getting rid of it altogether and privatizing. No, I'm
Right.
not with that either. But we definitely need to do several things. We got to look at each individual child and look at how are we funding these schools. The foundation of the system is racist and it's classist. How do you fund schools on property tax? Like it just doesn't make sense. It means that if I have a $50,000 home, I'm going to get a $50,000 education. If I have a $500,000 home, I'm going to get a $500,000 education. Until we deal with that foundation, everything that you try to do on top of that is still going to be a part of that unfair and unequitable system. And you know, as a Democrat, I'm a proud Democrat. Like we can't keep co-signing, you know, folks being able to send their kid to the best school because they're politically connected, and then on the other hand say that I support public education, because that's just, it's disingenuous, particularly when, for me, folks like me, that I got to go home to my same hood and see those brothers and sisters going to those schools that aren't doing well. Now, with that being said, and I've supported school choice, but I also feel like if a charter school's not working, you got to shut that as well.
Exactly. There has to be a system of accountability for sure. Absolutely.
All over the board.
On all levels. That's right.
All levels. So we're done.
Merit-based system for teachers, you know, I mean, God bless teachers unions, and I know that they have a place, but you know, that's been difficult too when when you have these teachers that are fantastic and they're doing everything they can, but yet they, you know, you've got a charter school or a magnet school that's offering them bonuses or helps them with things, they're not choked under the same rules and regulations of the unions. Then what happens? You lose the good teachers over to that. There's got to be things that we can figure out to do to give more options, because the way the system is now is it's not working. You're right. It's been failing for a very long time. And it reminds me of the season of The Wire. You know, I was late to the Wire, but the season, I think it was season 4 or 5, where they focused on the Baltimore school system and kind of, you know, everything with that. Man, it was very eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people to see how real that's real, and what are you going to do about that? You know, how are we going to? These kids are doomed for failure in a system like that. So how do you?
And the thing is, like, it's, for me, it's not even about pointing fingers. Like, you know, some folks are like, oh well, the union this, and oh well, the ministry. Like, and I'm not even. Look, I could go on and on about that one because I agree with you. You know, I call it the elevator to success. You know, and but for Black and brown people, the elevator is broken in many of our communities, and it's like, you know, come on.
Or there's not even an elevator.
Right.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So, I wrote my senior thesis in college on education reform, so it's something that's very near and dear to me, because I see the just how disadvantaged it is for so many, and that this is something that we could change, something we certainly could change.
All right, so what does the next 3 years look like for you? Like, what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to do with your platform as far as educating and empowering and whatnot?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on what happens in November. You know, I find myself in a very strange place where I'm literally fighting against the party and friends and people that I have built relationships with for 20 years. But it feels like it's the right thing to do, because it is. There's just no question about it. I don't second guess it, but I feel like I play a role as a truth teller. If I'm going to be that sentinel in the watchtower, and that's my role, then I embrace that. So that's kind of, for the short term, going to be my role is, and using my platform to make sure that I hold these bastards accountable and make sure that we are fact-based, and that what the hypocrisy that is going on is called out, and that more people are inspired to speak up and get involved, so that something like this, like Donald Trump, never happens again. That's the short term. Now, if Donald Trump wins again, God forbid, in November, I think it's going to be, I have to reevaluate how I'm going to approach politics and things. I mean, I hope to run for office one day. I'm very proud of you and brother Daz, if he's still.
Is that an announcement coming up? Do we have an announcement? Is this breaking news?
This isn't something that people don't know about me. I've always said has been my end goal. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? I've always wanted to run for office, and you know, it's just a matter of the timing. And so this whole Donald Trump era, what's going on, has kind of thrown that off a little bit, because I never expected we'd have to be like rebuilding sanity in a party before. But you know, that's the long-term goal, is because I think we need to have people in this country are sick and tired of the way the system is. And if Donald Trump wins again, I don't know if it's going to be starting a new party, if it's going to be trying to just clean up the mess to keep these. I don't know. It's difficult. A lot of what happens in the next 3 years is contingent upon what happens in November. Hopefully.
Do you ever see yourself joining the Democratic Party?
No. I love you guys, my Democratic brethren, but no, I would go independent if I had to. There's just too many things fundamentally that I don't agree with the party, that for me to join the party, that's not happening. But I don't have a problem reaching across the aisle and working on things where we agree. So, but yeah, sorry. I know I get that question a lot from my Democratic friends. I'm like, I'm sorry.
All right. So, what do you see as the future of the Republican Party?
Well,
or you know what? Let me not even say the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Conservatism. Like what does that look like in the future to you?
Yeah, well, you know, again, it's contingent upon a few things. I mean, if Donald Trump loses in November, his people and this ilk that he has kind of unleashed into the zeitgeist is not just going away. Mm-hmm. These folks are empowered, and there's a lot more of them than I ever realized, and they're not going to go away quietly. How we handle this and shame them back into under the rocks in which they came, I'm not quite sure, but we just have to disempower that, because and how we do that, I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out. But that kind of populist nationalism is dangerous, and that's how countries implode. And I see a very dangerous path if Donald Trump wins again, and these people are continue to be empowered to behave this way. Now, if he loses, then I think you'll see some of the principled conservatives who have been very outspoken be a lot more vocal. You'll have some more of the Republicans who have kind of stayed on the sidelines. They didn't want to get their hands dirty, like the Paul Ryans of the world, may come in and try to say that was just, you know, an aberration, and this is really what we believe, and try to act as though that didn't happen and fix things. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I think it's a Herculean task, though. No matter what happens, there's going to be a lot of cleanup. I mean, the party will destroy itself if Donald Trump wins again. I have to tell you that right.
Last question. Your prediction for the 2020 election. Well, actually, I have two questions. Your prediction for the 2020 election right now.
Right now, I think if the election were held today, Donald Trump would lose. From now until November is an absolute eternity. You know, we say, you know this, a week is a lifetime in politics. We're 6 months out. I mean, anything can happen, but this is what I'll tell you. Right now, Joe Biden has the advantage in that he's not doing any harm. As long as he doesn't do any harm, it's his to lose. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is doing everything he possibly can to blow this thing, but who knows? So I think people have got to pay attention. Donald Trump will do anything and everything. If that means, you know, breaking the law, if that means doing things that are unconstitutional, using levers of power that he has access to, he will try and do everything he can to delegitimize this election. He's starting it already with the whole mail-in ballots is rigged, and he's laying the foundation. You know, he's a master propagandist. And I think that we have to remain vigilant. And Black folks, please do not sit home and say, I'm mad because Joe Biden said something silly or whatever. Please, we can't do that. Too many people of color stayed home in 2016 in places that we need them to vote, like your home state, Pennsylvania.
I know. I know.
And in Wisconsin, you know, if the same amount of people of color voted in 2016 that did in 2012, Hillary Clinton would be president. We wouldn't have this nightmare. So I understand that there may be differences, but this time around, it is literally a life or death decision to vote this year.
Folks, this is a Republican. Joe Biden. I want you to be clear that this is a Republican conservative sister telling us that we need to go out and vote for Joe Biden. So
absolutely,
here's a question, and I don't want to keep you long. But here's a good. I think this. I'm gonna be very interested to hear this. As a conservative woman of color, who do you think would be the best running mate for Joe Biden?
Well, you know, this is one of the things where, you know, I depart from my Democratic brethren on the identity politics thing, you know, where it's like, he's got to have a woman, he's got to be a woman of color. And, I mean, I'm not as married to that as some others are. At this point, I mean, I have friends who work for some folks that are in the running. And so I don't want to pick or choose. I just think that he needs to pick. I'll tell you who I don't think he should pick. And some people might be mad at me for this, but I don't think he should pick Stacey Abrams. She's not qualified to be vice president. She hasn't even won a statewide race. I don't think that her PR to be the vice president is not a good look. It's not a good look. It's borderline desperation. And I think that she really needs to stop that. Do your work that you're doing and work your way up. She is not ready to be vice president of the United States. And I just don't think that that's what, you know, just because she's a woman of color who had some success at the state level in Georgia, now she's ready to be vice president. No way, especially not in this environment, and especially not with someone who's in their late 70s, who, God forbid, if something happened, would need to step in to be the president. No. I don't think so. So I just think that there are other more qualified people who are ready to go on day one than her.
So you're saying who?
I'm not saying who. I'm not picking. I'm not picking in this side. I'm gonna let y'all Democrats fight that out.
I mean, you've been giving us all the goods all night. I just knew that you had somebody that you thought would be good on the ticket.
I'm agnostic.
All right, how about this? Give me 3 choices. How about that? Give me 3 choices.
They all have to be women of color, right?
No, just 3. Who do you think? I mean, and here's why I'm asking this question, right? I'm going to vote Joe Biden. A lot of Democrats going to vote Joe Biden, but there's a lot of independent voters, and there's a lot of Republican voters that Joe Biden is going to have to court to win Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and whatnot. Like, if we're really getting down to the politics of it, you're going to have to get some of those votes, right?
For sure. So
you represent that demographic.
Yeah. Who he shouldn't pick. He shouldn't pick like Elizabeth Warren. That would turn off the moderate right of center folks who voted for Donald Trump last time, holding their nose, who don't want to vote for him this time, but they can't stomach somebody like Elizabeth Warren just because she's way too far left on economic issues. They just don't like her. So, you know, that's a no-go. I would have seen, I mean, if I had a dream ticket, this is like a total dream ticket, which is never happening, but like a Biden Kasich ticket would be great. Like, I think like a you cross over and you bring a Kasich in. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. Condi Rice, if you want to go with a woman of color, a Biden Condi Rice ticket. So, you know, like, these are like, as a conservative, these are the dream tickets I have going on. But no, like, back to reality. I think top 3 right now, what we're looking at, you have Kamala Harris is definitely in the top tier. Governor Whitmer in Michigan, I think that she is becoming a rising star, and she's demonstrated that she can handle adversity. You know, that's why it's always good to have a governor come with executive management experience. I like, who else do I like? That's a top 3. I mean, I would have liked to see Cory Booker, actually. I think Cory Booker would have been a good pick too, because he comes from my home state, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think I think Booker would have been a strong VP candidate also, but he's not running because it has to be women. So, but for women, I think it's between Kamala Harris and Whitmer.
Val Demings.
I like Val Demings. I think, but again, I don't know that she's necessarily ready on day one. The way that, you know, a Kamala Harris coming from a big state, being a senator, an AG, ran for president, you know, it was, you know, understands that scrutiny. I mean, she obviously didn't go all the way, but she's been there. And then, you know, I think Val Demings, I think she's got a bright future. I just don't think that she's ready to be vice president yet.
I mean, I have so many questions. I could hold you all night. But well, you know what? This is the last. I promise. This is the last one.
All right, you got it.
Right. So we talked about Vice President Biden, and there's been a lot of this. The crime bill. You know, you told black folk we need to go out and vote for Biden.
Right.
A lot of people push back, you know, talk about the crime bill. What's your response to that?
My response to that is that at the time that crime bill was passed, it was supported by an overwhelming majority of the congressional caucus and many black mayors and black elected officials in cities who were begging the federal government to please help them because of rising crime in their cities and districts. So at the time, there was support from folks within their own community for those tough laws. I mean, sometimes you know, hindsight is 20/20, and Biden has admitted that there were aspects of the bill, like the mandatory minimums and things, and the drug sentencing that had unintended consequences that did lead to mass incarceration. But he recognizes that, and a characteristic of a good leader, of a good legislator, is recognizing where those mistakes are made and going back and fixing them. And so I think that, you know, you can't really hold Joe Biden, you know, hold him responsible for everything that went wrong with the crime bill at the time and say that he was doing some kind of racist agenda when many black leaders were also pushing for that exact same agenda, not realizing what the ultimate consequences may have been. But the good that came out of it was worth it, but there was bad with it too, and you need to go and fix it. And those things have been happening slowly but surely. So who do you think would be in a better position to reform the things that went wrong? Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
From your lips to God's ears, I'm already sold. I'm with Joe, and I don't typically, you know, always go hard on the political, particularly on this platform. But you know, I think it's a necessary conversation, and I am so glad following her to hear the real deal from this real sister. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Or they can also listen to my podcast, Honestly Speaking with Tara, because, you know, that's one thing. You may not agree with me, but you'll always know that I'm coming from an honest place. And
yes,
shout
out to people.
They love my podcast. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Make sure y'all check out her podcast. I'm gonna link her podcast in my Insta stories and put it on my page. Make sure y'all following this great sister and all of the great work she's doing to educate folks. I appreciate you, sis.
You got it anytime. You got it, fam.
I'll talk to you.